My last 2 years in agency land have primarily been in a lot of DS work and like some other work streams that we'll kind of maybe touch on. And thought for like the mentorship group, it could be really nice to maybe look at some real, like, what does DS work in the wild look like right now? And so we'll go through some of that and just talk about like design systems overview, the types of projects that you might see. So that's kind of the spirit of the presentation. I came up with just a really great name, which was The Beauty of Systems Design and the Super Cool Things You Can Do for Money. So that's the presentation. I'm going to share my screen here. And if I'm looking off, I like the life hack for me has been to have like a left monitor where I'm engaging with you. And I'm also like focused during presentation or like when people are talking to like I'm hands off this. So if I'm looking over, this is like where my presentation stuff's happening, but I'm still here with you. So I'm gonna share my screen here. All right. And then with team, I'm getting used to Teams again. I got you all up over here. Hello, people. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Classic
Sure
question. I think we're set to fill here. Perfect. All right, the beauty of systems design and the super cool things you can do for money. Hey, Ryan, hello. So for the couple folks that maybe don't know me, been doing this for a while. I wrote the number 15 and I was like, ugh. Okay. So yeah, 15 years of experience, a lot of industries, automotive, furniture, crypto, renewable energy, healthcare. There's some more. I'm a bulldog. So yeah, shout out to all the dogs. My experience up until this point, Ferris was a graphic designer for a number of years at an agency, did more agency work, more like ad agency, went to Herman Miller Knoll now for about 8 years, spent the beginning part of that in kind of a more traditional graphic design space, and then moved into digital, which is really where like my passion was. And there's just so much opportunity at a 100-year-old company, bringing them forward in digital. So that was just an awesome chapter of my career. It's so great to see the faces on this call from a lot of that time. Moving away from internal, like I work for an org, to the agency life again, wanted to get a little deeper into like product design and like digital agency space. That's where I've spent my last 2 years. A number of awesome partnerships. A lot of the work that we're going to see today is from that. It's called Free Association. They're a digital agency that really specializes in kind of longer term partnerships as opposed to like maybe the normal agency model where you get the job, you do it, you're like, see you later, on to the next job. They really try to foster like a partnership and like with 3 months being like the average kind of like engagement that hopefully will extend. A number of my accounts ended up, extending a couple times. So I might spend 9 months with an organization like in the weeds in a number of different ways. Unfortunately, due to what I'm calling the tech winter, which is just unfortunate, like horrible time in tech right now, the company has had to like critically downsize. So for the first time in my career, I was like, kind of like, what's the next chapter for me? And so, luckily I've wrapped up a 10-week right now engagement that's like kind of pushing me into like, okay, what's this contract life look like? I was also really fortunate in that, my wife has, it could carry insurance. So like the messy part of life where you're like relying on these like very serious life things like insurance. I was able to kind of move over and it's kind of unlocked me. And now it's like onward and upward. What's next? So excited. And I put this little logo in here because I like started an LLC and I'm just kind of like broadening my horizons. Whereas for the first 15 years of my career, I was very much like have to have full time. I just had to have that. Whereas now, we'll see what happens. Pretty excited about it. So that's the experience bit. a lot of cool companies that again kind of cross the map of like automotive, furniture, tech, just featured partnerships here. Within those partnerships, I've sort of experienced kind of, and FA does a really great job of outlining free association again, or whatever Carl called it, the band name. The kind of 5-ish core service types that are designed to solve specific problems for growing technology-focused companies. And it doesn't have to be a tech company. It can be the Herman Millers or the older orgs that are like, our new mission is like to nail digital. Like, yes, those are the companies. And within those, these 5 kind of service types are around like North Star vision, product and feature evolution, product-led branding, brand and UI design systems. We'll be talking about that today. And design tools and automation. And have brief slides here that kind of visualize, like in the work that I've done, how it maybe touches on one of those core service types. The first of which is North Star vision. Love these projects because it's so pie in the sky. It's just like, there's no constraints. We don't have like all these limitations of platforms and things going on. It's like, what if we have this vision and like, let's see what that could look like, and then we start marching towards that. So it's radical product innovation. It's like testing out product strategy, validating market fit, like aligning leadership and stakeholders on this vision. And on the right side, I had the opportunity to work with Toyota on their Woven City, which is like this incredible thing happening at like the base of Mount Fuji, where they bought up had the real estate and are transitioning, I think, in a sense, from an automotive company to a mobility company. Like, it doesn't have to be a car that gets you from A to B. And so they like have this campus or like city, Woven City, that they've set up where you can sign up to live there, and they're just testing all of these different ways to mobilize anything and everything, and it was super cool. And so what I worked on was the kiosk moment. So like, you walk into this place, how do you sign in, how do you like get a badge, how do you, so it was like the kiosk experience, but very North Star vision. They ended up like, I think, taking a lot of this and running with it for kind of current state, but North Star vision, super exciting kind of project work stream. The next of which will look very familiar to others on the call, but I think it does a good job of speaking to like product and feature evolution. While in like the product design world, it might be Coinbase is like, hey, this NFT thing, we need you to dial into this one part of our product, and we're gonna evolve it or create like a new feature. For us, like with DWR, like e-commerce, it was like, how to shop by room, like we could put links to the things that you see in the photo, but digging in there and like developing a little feature, which in this case is like the little view products fly out, where it's going to tell you the specific like SKU that you're seeing in the photo. Like, how often do you see that like amazing photo and you're like, what is the pillow though? Like, what? I can't, how do I find it? So this is an example of like a feature evolution. The next of which is like product-led branding. This is a fun one because more often than not, big company hires a branding agency, incredible work. It's beautiful. It's so inspirational, and it's a 100-page deck, and it has 2 pages on digital, and one is like a gesture of what a homepage might be, and like half of like a sliver of a product page, but the type system doesn't hit the hierarchy that we need to do like real product things. And like, so this is a fun one where we're like, we have the cool like seeds over here, but like, let's go make it real in product. So with Sunrun, which was one of my clients for like 9 months, or partners for 9 months, got to do that, where they had this incredible new branding, and we got to implement it into all of their stuff, like their e-commerce, like checkout flow for solar energy. Super cool. A couple of examples of that. Next one, which we're going to really dig into, is this brand and UI design systems and how they're changing over time. This is like implementing the principles, the structure, certainly the components and the specs of a product. Won't even go into the rest of that because we're going to dig in. The next is design and automation tools, which I feel like has been really turned up the last like couple of years, which is like building tools for folks like us and helping them do their job better, more efficient, So it's like tools for creatives. In one of the case studies, we'll touch a bit more on this one. On the right side, you can see a plugin that we did for Credit Karma. So again, we're focusing here, brand and UI design systems. Today's goals are a couple of things. Would love to just ignite design system curiosity, like show you a couple of diverse projects that are in this design system world and explore different facets within product design. We're going to establish some real world relevance. Like these are real clients, partners that are like hiring companies to do these things. And third is just to like career path exploration. There's like so many little different things that you might like be inspired by to be, oh, I can do that, or I'm interested in that. So hopefully you can take away these things from today. Overview of design systems. This is a timeline. Super engaging stuff. But it does like show how kind of maybe quickly / long, depending on how our level of zoom here. But it's, 2014, the first Google material design launch, big moment. 2016, the rise of tokens and like the evolution of component libraries, and more recently, the rise of like AI powered design systems. And first thing is like, what? AI? We could cover this later, and happy to talk. Oh, yes. Emily.
Hi. Sorry.
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
some of the people on the call aren't like digital focused designers. So can
Yep.
you explain some of the terms you're using, like Google material design,
Yep.
design
Totally.
tokens?
Yep.
No,
Love
I don't
it.
want to make you talk
No.
more, but just
No, that's fine. I'm here to yak. It's all good. So yeah, let's cover a couple things. So first of which would be like Google's material design was, I think their first instance again in 2014. I think it was like with Android. They had developed this system and like launched it with a product. And it was, imagine how buttoned up you can be in that moment. Like everything that was in the OS is like exactly what the system had. But from that moment forward, it's like material is the DS, and now it's going out into the Google ecosystem, and all these different teams are using it and maybe adding, and like it just kind of is out in the wild now. And for designers, it was also amazing because I could go and use it. I could take it and skin it and leverage all of the thinking that's already inherent in what they have done. The other maybe one is the notion of tokens. So like a token is like represents a design decision. So like a color, and I name that color, and it's like my favorite red, and I'm like, this is Ryan's red. I can then in my system use Ryan's red in a number of places, like the button that I want, or like this headline, but it's all connected back to that token. So if I decide I don't like Ryan's red anymore, I'm feeling dark. It's black now. I modify that, it's now like flooding through the system. So it's like this great way to consistently have consistency and like manage across platforms even. So yeah, and feel free to like just raise a hand if you're like, what is that? All good. So next, back to the scary computers that could take all of our jobs. This is just a cool thing that I saw the other day, which was like so React Native GPT, so like AI, you can now put in an image. Like I design a UI, which in this case is like a pin like moment where you're probably doing like authentication. I just put that in there, and then it will code and like create an underlying system, and it says almost perfectly. I haven't tried this, but I saw this and I had to like take a walk real quick. So we can cover this later, but this sort of stuff is happening. But I think like ultimately it's more of a tool for us and benefit and streamline, not super scary yet. So next, how can design systems go wrong? So we have this notion of design systems. Really, the success kind of is really based on the people that are using it, the processes that are in place, and the maintenance of the thing. If you have no adoption, if I say, hey team, you're all in my org, I finished the design system. Like, let's publish a library, and now you all crack open a new design file, and you're like, I'm starting to make things. I'm using the button, and you're like, I don't really like that button, and you just use your own. It's the adoption piece of it is super critical. You can imagine that if the system sits on the shelf and nobody uses it, it doesn't work well. But some of the questions that we're constantly asking in this DS world is like, is this really how engineers would build it? Because if it's not, like, we've already like lost that bridge to like making this a reality. We are sort of in service of the engineers to like make these things come to life. I think, is this how designers want to use it? Like, is the structure of the component or whatever thing you're dealing with, how they expect and like their mental model of how they would use it? Can it scale if the org changes? Can we track results? Like, can we see how many times a component's brought on and someone starts busting it apart to take a piece that they want from it? Or does the leadership understand the benefits of what we're doing? Recently on a DS project, something as simple as like the grid. It's like, hey guys, there's this other way that we could manage the grid, the responsive grid in like a web situation that would be great to unlock design for efficiency's sake. And the engineers are like, okay, let's do like a proof of concept. So they do it, and the takeaway at the end of it would be, this is going to actually make things a lot easier for us in the long run. Like, wow, yes, we've invested now 2 weeks to do this, so that ate up money, time. But now they're like, this could cut X per sprint. Let's say they're like reducing their work so they can do more. We could do some back of the napkin math here and be like, we just saved 3 weeks by the end of whatever we're trying to do. That becomes like this awesome thing to take to executive leadership and be like, there's value in what we're doing. It's like, this is a real thing. We're not just like having fun doing a system, as if like everyone loves doing that. But next is just definitions. And I know I'm just yakking too much, but the definitions of this have changed over time. Originally, like a company like Envision puts out a definition like this, which is like, a design system is a collection of reusable components guided by standards that can be assembled in a number of applications. This was like for a long time the going definition. It's like a Lego blocks. You have like a pile of Lego blocks and you can build a house or an airplane or a dinosaur, whatever product you want. You have like your pieces. But as time goes on, and maybe I'll skip a couple of these, we start to change the definition. Like Salesforce is like, a design system is a set of interconnected patterns, not components, patterns and shared practices coherently organized to achieve the purpose of a digital product. Lastly, my favorite is material again. So they're good at this. A design system is a set of guidelines, principles, and tools used by an organization to ensure consistency in the design and development of digital products. So if I hack this into my own working definition, where I steal theirs, but add one important piece to me, which is unlocking innovation. Like, consistency is awesome, right? But if it doesn't help us like push the envelope and grow, then it could be better. So I like the idea of like the frameworks there. So principles, guidelines, and tools to ensure consistency and unlock innovation in the design and development of digital products. Here we can see like, so what is, what is it? Here, I love this checklist by Nathan Curtis, who like in the DS community is like a rock star right now. He created the 8Shapes plugin, which does automatic documentation of your work, so you're not spending hours and hours like spacing things out and annotating it for engineers. Automatic plugin does it all. He does great resources like this. I had the pleasure of working with him a little bit on the Credit Karma, where they like hired him on a little side mission. But if we look at this, you have so many things that could be encompassed in design systems. You have like, yeah, the stuff you expect, UI components, patterns, elements, page templates. But down here, you get into like the layout system, the editorial, the branding, the coding structure, like just there's so much to it, which you might feel like, oh my God. And this is one of my favorite old videos. And a little side note is my kids are 5 and 7, and they have started being like, what does blank word mean? And I'm like, hey, can't say that one. So this kid not only hits the point of that there's a lot to design systems, but also just resonates with me personally. Um, and that's a lot, but it does show that like design systems are more than like your buttons and your inputs and like the fields that you type into and like all the little stuff. There's a lot more to it. So if we start to look at some modern changes that are happening and then work with it, we get to modern design systems. So one of the big shifts, there's three here, I think is around from consistency again to design consistency and flexibility. So orgs want design systems that balance that with flexibility and allow for creativity and adaptation to diverse content and contexts. A project that came to mind for me was Cloud Kitchens. So Cloud Kitchens is was at the time like a stealthy startup that is living in the kind of Uber ecosystem, but they had this three separate products that were kind of operating in the same org that all had different design systems. So the mission here was to create a universal design system to empower them each to kind of go out on their own and innovate in their own products, but like bring it all together. We can't have like the 3DS thing. There's just so much redundant work being done across each. So many similarities. Let's say like 80% of it is shared componentry. Yeah, you sprinkle the brand on it, and that's going to make it a little different. But in this, we really sought to look at like stylistic flexibility. How do we make a system and tokens? Like, how do we create all those little starting tokens that can achieve all of their separate goals, but do it in one kind of universal way? So here you can see some screenshots of some of the style guides and some of the like modes and whatnot. The next piece was the designer UX. So this was really fun. And maybe 2 years ago, I wouldn't have even thought that this is like as impactful and it just as interesting as it was, which was like, how did designers want to configure these things? And what's the easiest way to capture the intent that they have? So like this is just a button. And we sort of proposed two different models to how we could set up the build of a button. So it sounds so simple and stupid. Like it's a button, but the button has like all of these different things baked into it: size, type, appearance. Like, does it have an icon? Is it split? Is it like nested? Is it grouped? All these things. And so this example looks at, like we say, do you want to do it by appearance or do you want to do it like by UX role, where we nudge designers towards like declaring the intent of the button off the shelf? Like, are they grabbing a regular button, a menu button, a split button? I'm going to say button so many more times in a row. The next one is just an example of the button build. So this is like the final sheet. They had chosen an option that we would then take forward through all other component builds with that same sort of mentality, whether it's like by UX role or just simply by appearance. The next one is around flexible structure. So again, that composability being like a kind of a hot buzzword right now. It's like, how do you make things composable? How do you offer, yeah, what do we got? Anything? Carl, yeah. I mean, I want it to be a conversation too. I don't want to just yak the whole time. Carl, like jump in, let's go.
No, I was just saying, like
Yeah.
on a DS I worked on like a year ago, like the documentation for literally the button component, how big that was about different roles, intents, what's a primary, what's a secondary, what's a tertiary, what's a ghost, when do you use it, like all of the associated color tokens, type tokens, stroke width tokens, and like the intentionality behind all of that. It's like the page was like insanely long.
Yeah.
Just for like button is like I'd say the second worst one, with the worst being like calendar picker, because
Oh
calendar
yeah.
picker has so much associated accessibility considerations for it, where it's just like there's so much you have to consider. Is like, what's the hover, what's the focus, how do you determine when
Totally.
it's selected, how do you determine a range, from start to finish. It's like, I
And
don't know.
even the distinction between like, who are we talking about now? Is it like a small org where people who are doing the DS are also doing the work, to where it might change the like makeup of it,
Mhm.
versus a DS team that is trying to like bake in inherent guidelines with the builds to like maybe not give every option of something, but totally. And I think with something like this, so like flexible structure. So guardrails are established by defining what each pattern could contain, but without making assumptions about what people are putting in there. So like this small example is like a card where we have like a top, a content, and a bottom. And in a sense, it like simplifies our work because the component is delivering like a shell. It's like empty blocks. But then you start to say like, what are the available slots within the top and what should go in the top? And we might hook up a couple options that are there, but it's additive and it's flexible in that the team can decide to add a new one. And they already sort of have a working understanding of what belongs there. And with documentation, certainly would fully understand. So yeah, just I think table also hits that same point where a table, okay, cool, you build the shell, but the internals, the table cells themselves, we might, for them, we sort of hit every table cell that we saw, merged some, questioned some, came to like, here are the 4 cells that are going to get you 90% of the way there. But here's also the tools to add new cells. Like they start doing data viz and they want like a little meter, progress meter that does something, like they can add it. And it's not a net new component. It's like this composable additive thing. And then literally a very cool sideways screenshot of a dashboard. The next one is
question for
yeah,
you,
please.
Ryan.
Yeah.
So in a world where you have such a detailed system with a lot of documentation guidelines, like what kind of best practices do you have to advocate for the usage? Because I found a lot of barriers or pain points in some cases are like getting people to adopt and adhere to the guidelines. So do you have any tricks up your sleeves around ensuring that those get adopted and are looked at essentially?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big fan of documentation, not only because I don't like to write it, but also that no one like very few people actually read it. So I like these sort of models where it's sneakily baked in, like even like the off the shelf availability, like you're in Figma and you're like it's also not that often that in the world that, at least the examples that I have, that a designer's like starting from an empty frame and just like literally dragging and dropping and building something. Let's say that they were. What things are we surfacing to them and what are like variants that are set up within? I think like that sort of infrastructure is what can guide without having to read anything. It's like if I allow you to pick off the shelf like the primary button, the secondary, the tertiary, and it's like do whatever is good in your design, versus like either pre-composing those in a couple of versions that like make sense for the usage. So that's maybe where my head goes, but yeah, that is certainly a challenge. So Dunk Dog, what do you got?
Oh, it's just quoting that agile
yeah.
trainer.
Shared documentation is not shared understanding. Yeah, totally, for sure. So this next one, from static collections to UX decision frameworks, I've really enjoyed working in this space where like component libraries are UX framework, decision frameworks, and guide strategic decisions. This is also like the sneaky bacon of like, you're not just making a new page, like what is the purpose of your page, and then offering some guidance. And it's almost like the recipe book. Like, here's a recipe for how you can achieve what you want to do. Sure, you can add more salt if you want, but the recipes are there. This example of, I don't know why it's starting at the bottom. Keeps doing this. Sunrun, again, the solar installer retailer. We did this responsive design system and leverage like new components, new grid. The components were rolled up into templates. But the templates weren't like, here's your homepage, here's your PDP, here's your like landing page. It was more like UX intent. Like, is this page to explore and like push people to like achieve their goal? Is this page to inspire? Is this page all about action? Like those sort of things shifted the mental model away from classic like page types to like UX intent of a page with some recipes, if you will, that were cooked up for them as examples. This was an example of like a deck where we unpack for like leadership what the content design system is. I think here certainly we have a base library, and I think traditionally like that's the design system, right? That's the buttons, the inputs, the like foundational pieces that get used. We lift those and leverage those to compose a web component library, and that's where things are organized by UX role. So there's a highlight component area where there's all these great arrangements of things, but their purpose is to like highlight a feature or like a product or technology or whatever it might be. Some people would almost consider this like storytelling module maybe or something. The other sort of things would be like a wayfinding module or routing from our past, like at Miller Knoll, where the purpose of that is to like outline the offer and get folks to where they're looking to go. Some pages should have a lot of wayfinding, and their job is to really like outline whatever this category or thing is and get people to complete their goal. Or there's an action page where we like, okay, this isn't a lot of education. This is not a lot of wayfinding. This is about like getting you to take action, quite literally. And then the process for this is interesting too, because we think about the work that we do and we design stuff. But what's interesting about UX decision framework, like that idea, can go so far upstream if you get folks on board and if you're speaking the same language and everyone's like adopting this idea of like, in this case, like explore, inform, action. We can go up to whoever was like, CEO guy is like, I want a new page or I got a new product and we're going to launch it. That person then says, hey, person that's writing the brief. And if that brief person is already thinking in the same way, they're like, well, are we looking to like explore here? Are we looking to like take action? Like we get that upstream. It's like now, if we get that, we can spend time like innovating in that space versus spending our time like coaching in that moment to be like, oh, the thing that you're asking for and the thing that was maybe way too detailed outlined is more of like an explore moment or more of a kind of you name it. And so another piece to this was like looking at like critical user journeys. So imagine a homepage and maybe there's like an already inherent like Frankenstein homepage that's already there. I would say that leaning on critical user journeys can be so powerful in this world where you can kind of challenge the status quo or like where people are automatically at mentally. The example here could be, is the purpose of this page, maybe it's like the homepage, is it to build confidence in the company? Because we have perspective then that maybe we start by highlighting, perhaps then we wayfind and outline things that are relevant to building confidence. Is it like the about us or awards that you won or whatever it is per org? But you can see how the mental model behind building confidence shapes the module order, the amount. Contrary to that, if you're like, well, what if our critical user journey is just like high traffic? Like we know that our page is getting a ton of traffic and we want to hit certain notes because we know that those high traffic people are often coming for like pricing or like the latest and greatest or whatever it might be for the org. That is an entirely new strategic assortment of those modules. Lastly, you could be like high dollar, like we got to make more money. Okay, we might start trimming stuff in like the CTAs, more action components, more things that are driving. So like with these three things, like took not that long to compose or rough these out. But now the organization is finding value in having to make that strategic decision to say, well, what are we trying to do on this? And by like kind of shaping those things out, it's really helping like them at like an org level, us at a design level, break through and get some approvals going, if you will. So critical user journeys, super impactful. Couple screenshots at the bottom. I know my time, trying to be sensitive to that. I think we're on the last one here. Similar frameworks when you think about design decisions of visual assets you create on the page as well. In content, you're right, for sure. Yeah, it doesn't have to be like flying at that level. The model there, definitely, for sure. This last one, prescriptive guidelines to adaptive design guidelines. So we offer guidance, and this is really that sneaky, like baked in bit as well, which is allowing for interpretation and creativity and empowering designers to innovate within structured framework. Maybe like underline that bit. An example of that. So with Credit Karma, we built a data viz library of components. In the Credit Karma app, I don't know if y'all are users. I am. Love to check that credit score, see what's going on. They didn't have a lot of data viz. They had like a line graph that would show your change of your credit score over time, but they have so much data and they really want to help their members visualize that and better understand their situations or their potential kind of changes that they could make. So we really wanted to unlock creativity and experimentation in the data viz space. Credit Karma nerd? Credit Karma nerd. Love to check that credit score. So the first bit of this was like adaptive guidelines. So this is a screenshot of like some of the actual charts and graphs that we cooked up. You can see bar chart, meter, donut, histogram, key value, which is like maybe questionably data viz. I think yes. Line graph, meter, segment, like there's like 12 or 15 of these things. What's cool is if you focus on the patterns, you could start to compose with it. So and empower what they have there is vertical designers. So Caroline's familiar with the app. If you go on the money tab or the credit tab or the other tab, there are teams that are kind of responsible for their own lane there. We want something that each one could crack this open and be able to better support their members in each kind of unique scenario. This, apologize that it's small, but what this shows is like a mock-up composed of like a header with a select menu, a key value grid that elevates like the top primary values from whatever you're kind of seeing here. Tabs, so I can flip between like, I don't know, I think it's like totals and trends here. The actual chart, so we're delivering that for sure. And then the legend that has a value that tells you what each of the segments are. With that model, we could, with that tab approach as well, we can flip here between totals and trends, serve two different charts that are doing two different jobs or UX roles. Like in this case, I'm saying like, I want to see my totals versus I want to see my trend over time. Totals, great. Let's show the whole and show the breakdown of the whole. Trends over time, we want to see like that kind of monthly in addition to that sort of segmented bar there. Guidance and tooling was so key to the success of this. Like, I don't expect, and nor did anyone, for every vertical designer to be a data viz wizard. Like, they're now pro data viz people. They could look at something and be, oh yeah, that's definitely a bar chart. That's a line. That's a multi-line line chart. Like, no way. So what I loved about Credit Karma as a partner too is that they were willing to invest in this Figma plugin for their designers to help them make better product. And so the idea of this plugin was that a designer could just simply say, what do I want the member to be able to do? Do I want them to get status of something? Do I want them to compare? Do I want them to see change? Do I want them to distribute something? And with the charts and graphs, there's maybe 15, but with each chart or graph, there's a nuance that you can do. So like with a line, let's look at the line graph. If it's a single line, you can only show like change, right? But you can't compare unless it's a multi-line. So with this tool, I could say, I think the member's really wanting to compare this data point that we have for them. They click compare, and now we've pre-composed all these charts and graphs that nail comparison. And they can kind of choose which one they think best suits, or even better, do them both and test it. Like send everything to test. And that's where the composition of the component was critical, that we did not want anyone detaching. So there's a lot of work that went into like, how do you manipulate in a component a single bar to be smaller to where they could give in a test realistic customer data and not have like a default bar chart that's they're just slamming in there and being like, what do you think of this? It's something that they can actually manipulate through like auto layout and like variants and all of the goodies that Figma has given us over the last couple of years to do this really well without detaching. They can say, I want to test this new comparison thing. I'm going to do every single chart maybe that's in the comparison tab, modify them with variants, test it. And then one of them is the victor. It'd be great. Go on vacation. Another piece of this was the extended DV color palette that came with it. So you have to have like these unique palettes that are to cover trend or a categorical color, or I think what were they? Sequential and diverging palettes. And there's a lot of like accessibility baked into this. So that was just a super interesting kind of side mission on this project, and a cool screenshot to end it. So the conclusion of all this, I think like the parting thoughts are maybe less about design systems and more about this like work in general. I think the first of which is just like falling in love with the problem. I think we as like digital designers are really good at this. Like now you want to like your job is to figure out the new structure of like a Figma instance in this organization, and like you start designing in that, and it's not like you're doing a poster, but it's like I think it's important to like you don't fall in love with the idea, you fall in love with like the problem, and that could be like wrangling stakeholders to buy into something, or it could be like doing one of these insane complex systems. The second one is like to put the computer to work, and this one's like real top of mind for me. It's stolen from a great friend and super talented engineer, Kyle Truscott, who I worked with at Free Association, who he just did a presentation on design to code with Figma widgets, and how you could sort of like automate some of your design decisions. And I think like the takeaway for me on that was like, I really need to be better than like just doing stuff on my own and like trying to prevent as many like redundant mouse clicks as possible. Like I'm going through this component and I'm editing the same thing 50 times. Like, is there a quick Google search? Is there a community resource that's out there? Can I figure out a way to automate this just to save time and like put the computer to work? The last one is embracing your network. So you all are doing that. Like you're a part of this great mentorship program. And I just think that the design network is just such a force, and it provides opportunities and fosters, and this is a resilient community. And what am I, if not a testament to that, in that I reached out to folks when, my company was downsizing and it got help. Like someone's like, hey, by the way, like I'm doing this thing. Like without the network, it's just a super great thing and very top of mind and like near and dear to me in this moment. Which is just like, yeah, lean on the network. The stuff that's helped me is like fun, but we're running out of time. These are like just 10, maybe like 8 years ago, I did a design systems presentation, and I love that all of these things were still true to me. The funniest one is the top left, which at the time it was talking about like adapting to new tools, and InVision was the exciting new tool that people had to adapt to. And if you don't even know what InVision is, I don't blame you. It's fine. But now it's Figma, so I just like slam that over the top. But yeah, I think there's some good stuff here. Maybe the best one, the lower right, smile, is just like, I don't know. For whatever reason, I feel like working in a coal mine would be like the worst possible hell on earth. And I'm sorry for people that have to do it. So if I'm having a bad day, things aren't going right, work's getting roasted like it's Comedy Central. And I just smile. I'm not down there with that guy, those guys. So yeah, love to stay in touch. Here's all the info: email, LinkedIn, Instagram, Discord, website. Call me, whatever. Yeah, it's been great to jam with you guys. Thank you, and you, and you, and you, and you, and you, and you. So appreciate it. The end. What do we got? Questions, comments? Let's chat.
Let's chat indeed. I have so many questions, but I'm gonna open it up to other folks first, to see what you want to know more about.
I have a question, Ryan.
Yeah.
This is for the benefit of my mentees on the call. Thanks, guys, for showing up. Okay, so for people who, so you mentioned, and I know, but you mentioned that you worked previously more in like brand design, and then transitioned into digital UX product design type things, because that's where your interest lied. Number one, I'm curious, like, how did you know that that's where your interest lied? And then number two, like, how did you make that career transition?
Yeah. Good question. I think that, first of all, my internship was at an agency, and that agency kind of took on all and any work. So like, I starting out, I would be like handed something and be like, hey, this Bob's Plumbing needs a website, and by the way, the logo isn't great. Just do a new logo and let's see if they buy it. Like, it was a very scrappy agency where I had this amazing, like, just diverse design challenge assortment. It was like poster, environmental, like big thing that's going to go in a showroom. It was just everything. And in that work, I was just really drawn to digital. And so total preference, I think, in that moment. I think the latter part, where it was like at Herman Miller in particular, I was not hired to do digital. In fact, they had just hired a senior manager of digital, which is Eric. For those of you who know Eric, and I just immediately was like, "Hey, do you need help with anything? Like, I got a minute here," and it was like pestering him, and then just took a couple times where he was like, "Yeah, you know what?" Or like sending resources. It was really like more of an interpersonal communication. Like, I want to make sure that he knows I'm into this, and that everyone sort of knows, like, this is where my passion is, and I would love to be a part of it. And so, in a sense, I was doing extra work. It was like, in addition to my normal workload, would be happy to like help out on a thing. And then, just, I think over time, it was like a role opened up, and I was like, yeah, I'm there. So yeah, it's kind of what it was for me.
Love it.
Pestering people in your company is a very the squeaky wheel. Yeah, anybody else?
In the spirit of putting the computer to work, do you have any good resources for folks who are making that similar transition or just interested in learning more about design systems, like kind of as a starting place?
Yeah, I think for me, it's Google and it's community searches in Figma. The willingness and like incredible network of designers who are willing to like crack a code in some way, shape, or form and post it for others to use. An example of this is like with Sunrun, I was trying to, like, the engineering team really benefited from like scaling frames and like seeing that, like, how does it actually move? And I was having trouble with assets because I wanted them to maintain their proportion. And Figma inherently like just changes width, and it doesn't like automatically do that. So I'm like, I wonder if someone's cracked this. And sure enough, there was this incredible resource where proportional scaling was available. They like wonderfully, like, just the craft and detail in it, to where I just like took this component, updated the aesthetic, modified some stuff just to make it like kind of similar to the variant structure that we used. But like, that was an example where I'd been dealing with this like proportional thing for so long, and bam, community resource. I feel like that's maybe the lightest and lift, is just to like dedicate a little time to research. Somebody might have already cracked it.